the old term, born in a trunk. I was born in a backlot. So I don't know if we want to get into all this now or if we want to
Yeah,
save
if you
it.
want to, yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
And of course, I've told this story a gazillion times, but I always think it's kind of important, especially it's such an oddball career, which is why Joe Madri did that book, Strange Idea of Entertainment, because he said, no one's had the kind of flip flops and turns in the road as I have. But to me, a lot of it came from being born to a USC film, student basically, who never got a chance, to make the movies he wanted to make. And I inherited his dreams and grew up there in Culver City and stuff. And anytime I've gone anyplace else, like when I've shot in Charlotte, or I was there, I guess 2 years ago at one of the horror conventions, or Wilmington, did a lot of movies down there, or New Orleans, or, pretty much any place I go, it's like, I could live here. This is cool. I like it, it because it's like solid and it's, something that's been there a long time. I mean, we live on a fucking, earthquake. I mean, it's just a matter of time when all this shit's going to break in half and we're going to go into the ocean.
Enjoying alongside Hawaii.
So, my feeling has always been, look, you're here as long as you're here. You do the best you can. You go on as many adventures as you can. You meet as many great people as you can. And hopefully you make some stuff that you can kind of leave behind, that people go, yeah, no, I remember that guy. It was, he did this or that. And sorry.
It's all right.
To me, that's sort of what I think all of us should sort of be focused on, minute to minute. When you're in this city, it is weird. I mean, yesterday was my girlfriend Laura's birthday, and I had a bunch of things planned, and I was trying to get from point A to point B. It took hours to cross to get any place. I mean, it's like, downtown Manhattan now. And things like that, it's like, where's everybody going? Are they not working? Are they, what's happening? And then of course you wrap all this COVID stuff into it. And it's like, are we still restricted? Are we not restricted? Now there's a whole new thing, obviously.
But just aren't the laws a little lighter right now with the restrictions on COVID right now, or with the mask,
but
right?
That's changing as of today.
So what's the rule now?
Yeah, it's now, it's like now they're starting to go, well, maybe it is a good idea to wear the mask. Like, the gym where I work out, my girlfriend works out, just today they said, we've had no masks. Now they want the masks in there. Certain, stores you go into, they're like absolutely cool. Other ones have the sign, wear the masks. No one really knows, what the rules are. And all the stuff about the vaccinations, of course, is, yeah, if you're vaccinated, you should be fine.
Right.
But, and, every so often somebody says something about, no, I got both vaccinations and I got it, but it wasn't that bad. Well, I got it too last Christmas and it wasn't that bad.
Right.
And I've got vaccinated and all that. And as far as I'm concerned, we're overdone, move on. Yeah. But everybody else, this whole thing about, no, I refuse to get vaccinated, or I refuse to believe it's what it is. I'm not going to judge anybody. It's like, it's your body, your life. Right. But obviously a lot of this stuff is true. I had it. I know it's real. I don't get sick. I'm a vitamin junkie. I've been, I don't think I've had a cold in God knows how long, just because I believe in that. If you take enough stuff, you're cool. And I was. So the COVID thing really, shocked me that I could, actually pick that up. But I had my daughter here who had contracted it. Kept her upstairs, kept the distance, but it didn't matter. Well, COVID found its way in.
See this way through here. Yeah.
So, and, so me and my girlfriend, had, as I said, a cozy COVID Christmas.
I think before the whole COVID thing broke out, because this was back in, I think December, it was probably December of 2019. I remember I was so severely sick. Like I was, the symptoms that now are known to be COVID, I believe is what I had, because what had happened was, I remember I was working and I was just, I've never been so miserable up to that point. So we went to the urgent care and I think we went to two. One didn't check for flus because that's what I thought I had. And then when I went to another urgent care, they had looked at me. They did all the testing, flu test, the strep throat, the whole bit, and nothing came out as being positive for either one of those symptoms. They're like, this is so weird. I don't know what, you have the symptoms, but you're not diagnosed with it because we can't find any results for that. And I was like, that is so weird. Well, I don't know what this is that I have, but I'm walking around the entire house, separating from myself from everybody because I don't want to get them sick. But I'm
Yeah.
touching things and cleaning things. But the whole protocol for COVID hadn't kicked in just yet until like the following month or two. So I believe I've had it, but I've never had it since, at
Yeah.
least those symptoms. So, because out here in North Carolina, at least where I live, because I live out in Gastonia, which is just outside of Charlotte,
Mhm.
tends to be a little more conservative. So there's definitely a different feel for what the rules are and what applies for certain individuals.
Yeah.
Some of my neighbors. But when you go to Charlotte, it's literally like, more libertarian, which is more free. Yeah, we're relaxed. Everyone respects each other. At least that's the impression we're getting. But it's a big wavelength of like inconsistencies of like what the rules are here, and then what the rules are, what the rules were back then.
Yeah.
So COVID for me, like, has, I think, kind of just changed everything for the world, if you really think about it, because,
Yeah.
I think I tend to look at it as more in a way like how people tend to, if you're stupid before COVID, you're still going to be stupid after COVID. And hopefully people will pick up on that and learn from that and not make the same mistakes. And then the people you thought were intelligent in handling the situation a little bit better turn out to be not so intelligent. So it's a very scary thing. Like that's the part that scares me the most, not because of the COVID. Yes, COVID is scary at times, but it's really more about how people handle themselves in that situation. That
Yeah.
I've learned a lot from that period of, who tends to be more, you know, sensible in those situations, who tends to be a little more erratic in those situations too. I think recently there was a video that Rick Schroeder just like flipped out on somebody out in at a Costco because of the rules that they had still implemented about wearing the mask, and he just
Mhm.
made a whole thing about it and made a video, and it was going off on his tirade about what, don't go to Costco, cancel your submission or your membership and go somewhere else. And like, you really have to go that far just to make a point?
Yeah.
Like, is that
Yeah.
really that important for you? Is it just we live in a free country, right? Just go to another one. How hard is that?
Yeah.
So
But you know what? You just nailed it right there.
yeah.
Rick Schroeder. When have we heard that name in a while?
Uh
Guess what? So there's going to be a billion Rick Schroeder fans because of what he did, and then there's going to be a billion of people like, I love that kid. What happened to him?
yeah.
So somehow so much of this too is we're in a world of media,
Yeah.
and you can say things now and you're going to have ears like you've never had before, hearing stuff and seeing stuff and creating opinion, and you become important because you said something that somebody else took, and then suddenly it doesn't necessarily go viral, but it goes big enough that a lot of people like it or share it.
Right.
So it's like a whole different universe in how it's not just celebrities now that are important. You have media people that
Yeah. People are
become
getting
important.
famous that we never heard of 2 years ago. All of a sudden now are household names just because, some either tend to be more conservative, more liberal, but it's obviously those ideologies that help put them in that spot. But a simple topic as COVID kind of just catapult them to a whole nother level, which is crazy. A
Yeah,
disease did that for them. So
yeah,
it's really ridiculous how times have changed with that with the landscape of how people can become famous now. But that's one of the reasons I also wanted to talk to you too, because you had mentioned before in the email that you kind of go all over the place, which is what I wanted to happen, because there's a lot of things that I've come across with your career, and just based on your journey, that I found rather fascinating, that I wanted to point out and highlight, because the entertainment industry, I love it. I've never been in it, but I love the history behind the industry. And you always tend to find little nuggets here and there that you have a connective tissue with. One person worked with another person who worked with another person,
yeah.
and then that person was influenced by that individual's work, and then eventually started to change the landscape of cinema, if you will.
Mhm,
And in a lot of ways, that's you were part of that, that culture change, if you will.
mhm.
And when I hear the stories that you have shared on more than one occasion, um I find it interesting that, in my opinion, you seem rather consistently the same as far as how, your personality goes. The interviews that I saw 15, 20 years ago, and I'm watching it now, you seem exactly the same. And I find that very,
Boring, yes.
and well, no, not quite the contrary.
Kind of the way I've always looked at life is there's no like one truth
Mhm.
in anything. And of course, I've learned that very well as a director, directing actors, because basically, it's that thing that what are you basically telling an actor to do? To lie, the lie better, each take, I still feel like you're guilty. And it's like, I am guilty. Yeah, but we shouldn't feel that. We should be sitting there going, I just watched this guy hack this woman up and he's talking like, he just had another day at work and everything's fine. That's the way it goes. And the extreme cases of people who are completely psychotic, and then the people that really have had no life, there's times where you can't really see a difference in life with those personalities. And, that's, interviewed people on death row who have done horrific things, or some of the true crime things I've done. And then just spending a lot of time, just watching, just observing people in life, and seeing in particular how wonderful and genuine and, willing to explore things most people are. That said, there's plenty of people who are terrified and live in a very, cocooned life. And I'm not just talking about, agoraphobic. I had that situation with my mother in her later years. It was just impossible to get her out of the house. But a lot of people, just in terms of their belief system, that's just it. I'm this, I'm Christian, I'm Jewish, I'm Scientologist, you want to talk to me, talk to this, and you can't get to that person. I'm Republican, I'm Democrat. We have so many labels now. It's insane. You can't be just a he or a she. You have to be a he, she. You have to be, a trans with like 5 other things after it. And if you don't call that person that, you're insulting them. And I understand we needed to open up our universe, but now it's sort of this branding, labeling, where do you fit in which box? And that's always been very frustrating to me, just as an artist, because the thing I've tried to do in my career is do every kind of movie, every kind of genre. Yes, I'm mainly known as a horror director, but if you look at my entire body of 42, 43 films, whatever it's been, you'll see, maybe 4 of them really are horror. And then there's, thriller, suspense, Christmas movies, true crime, Hallmark Hall of Fames, all of these other things in there, mainly because I wanted all those experiences. I wanted to do all the research. I wanted to kind of put myself in the skin of these characters that, we were going to portray, whether they were real or, created by me or another writer. And I think in general in life, we all are actors. We all put on a particular, face. You see a terrible play and, your friend's kids in it, and you go backstage, you go, oh, you were incredible, and of course you were half asleep through the whole, we lie and we try to lie good because we want people to feel okay.
It's a balancing act, I think.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with people's defensiveness. There's a lot of, peers I have in the business who don't like actors, and some even hate actors. And it's like, they are demanding them and they're babies. And I said, have you ever tried acting? You know what it's like to, you're a grip, you grab something, you fix it, and okay, that's it. You've done your job. Now, they have to come in here and create some sort of fantasy with 80 people watching like this, and make it believable and do it again and again and again. You don't think they're going to be somehow not emotionally fucked up in some way to be able to do that, to shut off reality and dive into that? So there's going to be baggage that comes along with that. There's going to be, why is the air conditioning not into my motorhome? Don't you know what and they make a scene and everybody goes, this baby. And I've certainly dealt with a lot of different types like that, but I tend to forgive them very fast because I want to be able to embrace the idea. It's not what they set out to do. It's just, there's a very emotional person in there, and there has to be somebody that can tap their emotions. And there's times where they get away with, from you, as they do in life, as there's times where people can be very cool and other times they'd lose it. So I've just taken an attitude, and I heard it many years ago in Charlie Chaplin's movie Limelight, is that, we're all amateurs. We don't live long enough to be anything else. And I've always loved that, and being a student of life. And I do that when I teach film classes and stuff. I go, look, I'm here to learn from you. I'm going to give you stories. I'm going to give you craft. But at the end of the day, I want to see what you come up with. And then whatever you do, you're going to influence this guy over here and her and me, all of us,
Yeah.
with what you come up with. And then we're going to learn something different. But all I'm asking you is to reach inside, steal from Kubrick, steal from Spielberg, steal from all the greats did that. Every composer, painter, any artist steals, not borrows, steals from their mentors, make it theirs. And as time goes on, their personality, who they are, starts to overtake that.
Yeah.
And yeah, they may be grounded in a particular kind of genre and certain people you see the influences, but it really becomes, their work ultimately. And this is kind of what I try to do both as myself and also when I'm trying to, pass that information on to people is risk, risk to fail, learn from the failures. You learn far more than you do with your successes.
Yeah.
Like the next time you go, all right, what the hell did I do last time that worked? 9 out of 10 times your second one doesn't work, and you're terrified what happened to me, because sometimes you just luck out, the Duffer brothers, who do Stranger Things.
Yeah.
They were students at Chapman University like 10, 12 years ago, I guess it's been now, maybe 13. And all those dudes did was 80s movies. And all the professors said, guys, there's more than the 80s out there. Come on, come up with some other stuff. But that's what they loved. That was their passion. And when they graduated, it took almost 9 years of doing other gigs and writing scripts and keeping busy and stuff till Stranger Things finally happened. And guess what it was about? The very thing that they loved. That was their passion.
And they almost created like a subgenre just off of that alone. It
exactly.
seems like, yeah.
I mean, it did. It was a huge game changer. Mm-hmm. John Badham is one of the teachers down there. And, for most of this generation, they go, oh yeah, he did the one, the dancing thing with the John Travolta. Yeah, that one. And I go, he did more than that. If you think about it, most of us make movies, they're entertainment, great, you move on. He made a movie, and yes, the disco era and all that stuff came up, but you would have not loved that movie if his directing of the actors, of the way that story was told and stuff, didn't somehow work. I mean, it's one of those movies I can see at any point in the movie, having to flip around and come in, or somebody say, you want to watch that? Yeah. It really, really works. And I said, John changed the fucking world with that movie. Yeah. Nobody appreciates that fact, because it's like you think of, filmmaking as, entertainment. But every so often something comes along. I'm working with Dan Merrick right now, who did Blair Witch. Mm-hmm. Same kind of thing. What he did, and as a kind of a fluke with his, schoolmates and stuff to make Blair Witch, revolutionized filmmaking, not just horror, but that whole idea, we're going to do a found footage movie, man. I mean, it's a genre in and of itself. Yep. And, he's a very cool, very chill guy. He's great to be with and talk about, and we've got he's got a series called The Black Veil that I was about to shoot the second episode until unfortunately got the plug pulled over both COVID and actual racism. Which killed because that was basically the message in my piece was two monsters that were kind of going on. But Dan right now, as we talk, is out there trying to find another location, got line producers going through Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia, trying to find another place that we can do this movie together.
Right.
And, and again, he's one of those guys that just has this great chill vibe about him and very focused, of the things he wants, he's going to go for. So I know it's a long, dragged out, winded.
No, that's what I wanted, because that's the reason, like I said before, I wanted to talk to you, because there's a lot of insight that you have that I think most people may not consider that is very important to bring up. I've talked with an actor before, Louis Mandylor, who is a phenomenal actor. I absolutely love him as an actor, and I love a lot of his movies too.
Yeah.
But when we were discussing about film work, one of the things I was highlighting with him was that, for someone like myself. Oh, and I'm sorry, and I also mentioned, I forgot to mention, I talked with also David Michael Lab, and David brought up really good points about how people perceive, the final product. It's like they don't care about what happened to make the movie. All they care about is the spectacle. They want to be entertained, and I agree with that. I agree with that notion. But what he also says is, don't worry about it. And I disagree to a point. I understand what he means by that, but I still am very, maybe I'm just too clinging on that, but I love the stories that you hear about what it took to make the movie. Like you look at The Godfather, for example, the
Mhm.
movie's is phenomenal, but the story of what it took to make that film, and it's years and years of stories worth of materials that can like go on for decades.
Yeah.
But that story was way more interesting than the film in itself, to the point where now there's two different projects. Last I heard, there's a show that they're shooting right now called The Offer through Paramount Plus right now.
Yeah, my son, who's also in the film industry, just told me about that. I think
Yeah.
he's going to get a gig on that, and he's really excited.
I hope he does, because that sounds like a very promising and very, very interesting
Yeah.
project from how I understand how they're going to go for it. And then I believe there's supposed to be a film too, which if I'm not mistaken, if it's still going on, but I haven't heard about it for quite some time. Oscar Isaac's playing Francis Ford Coppola, and Jake Gyllenhaal's playing Robert Evans.
Wow.
And so, but I mean, this is like almost like about 6 months ago is when I first heard about this. But right now, Oscar Isaac's doing Moon Knight, so who knows what the
Yeah.
status of that project is. But
Yeah.
again, it's like, the things that it took to make those movies is not a very easy process. And a lot of times, even Francis would say, when people say, I loved your movies, I wish you would have said that in 1971 when I was shooting the film, because it was pure hell. I was on
Yeah.
the verge of getting fired on a day-to-day basis, but we take that for granted.
Yeah.
And, the filmmaking process, television, comedy, music, all that stuff, the journey is the most interesting part. And I think that's the part where, us, the general public tends to overlook. And, I hope, and I don't expect it's going to catch, I hope it's going to catch on, but if it doesn't, well, one day someone will look back and say, what was that period like in that time when this occurred? And I
Mhm.
always said it before, and I'll say it again. Look at these interviews that you've come across, and listen to those individuals that have been in it and hear their story. And that's where you're going to get your education. You're not going to get it from the EPKs, from the DVDs, or the Blu-rays. They're all just going to show you the beautiful side of it. Yeah, he was a great director, but if you hadn't seen, fuck that guy. He was an asshole.
Yeah.
But he did direct a good movie. He's a good director, but he's a terrible person to talk to because he has no social skills, but he is really good at what he does. That's why his films are fantastic. So
Mhm.
all the energy is focused on that. So that's, you learn about those little details. And I think that's a very fascinating thing. But then you come across people who have been in the industry and don't realize that those individuals that have been a part of the industry have been in other parts of history in film. For example, like Lloyd Kaufman, I've learned years ago. Everyone knows him for Trauma, but when you look at his filmography, you find out that he was a scout locator for Rocky. He also did a little bit part in the film as well too. He also was a scout locator for Saturday Night Fever. So he
Mhm.
was a part of those films. No one
Yeah.
knows about that.
Yeah.
So, and when you listen to him talk about it, it's like holy shit, these guys were a part of a history, but who's going to take the time to look at that? No one. So,
Yeah. Well, again, we're talking, and I'm hopefully, whoever's listening to this, all we're in this club that we love movies, we love
right.
TV, we love media, we love to be part of this. And it's fascinating to get to know the artists behind it.
Right.
And,
Right.
But for the general public, it's fast food for most people.
Yeah.
It's like, look, if I can get 2 burgers for $3.99, that's what I'm going to do. I don't give a shit if it's bad for me or anything else. I just need to get fed, get on with it, So they look at movies, TV shows. It's like, oh, if they like one, they'll sit there and, binge it, and that'll be it. Or they'll watch it, and then what else is on? There's so many choices, but it's all just very, as I said, like cotton candy, it tastes great at the time, and then it's forgotten and gone on. And some of it's not good for you, and some of it doesn't have any effect one way or the other. But for those of us who do want to make, a change in life and are interested in the artists who do it, I mean, I would love to know what Mozart, ate. I'd love to know what he talked about when he wasn't talking about music.
Right.
Does anybody else give a shit? No, play the music. It's gorgeous music.
Right.
So we're always going to be faced with that. There's going to be those of us that are fans, and then we actually get to do it, or there's people who are just going to be fans, and they'll love stuff that you go, really? You thought that was good? It's like, oh man, you had this and this and this, and go, man, I'm just making a buck. I was just, I just flying off my instincts.
Yeah.
And then there's others of us who really do sort of sit there and say, I want to say something, and let me see if I can find a way to do it that doesn't feel like it's a sermon. It doesn't feel like you're preaching. And I was a huge fan, still am, of Frank Capra. because I've always loved the fact that his movies always had this one message, which people picked up on and probably weren't even aware it was, is that one person can make a difference. You know, all those stories, Mr. Smith, Mr. Deeds, It's a Wonderful Life, those characters played by Jimmy Stewart or Gary Cooper, whatever, were just a basic guy, you know, who is thrown into a situation and really has to go to great ends to prove whatever he's saying is the truth. And we all face those things in life, you know, to greater or lesser degrees. So it's a great, you know, kind of a human message.
Mm-hmm.
And over the last, I guess it's been about 12 years now, no, 11 years or so, ever since I got the band back together again, or I did, all of us came back together with
you're
the
talking about the
Sloths
Sloths here. Yeah.
You know, I get up there and it's my one moment to preach. And I said, I'm just going to say this because everybody has the same thing, no matter what it is you're doing. Don't give up your dreams. You're looking at somebody that wanted to do this 50 years ago. I wanted to be, you know, Mick Jagger and Roger Daltrey and all these guys when I was 15, 16 years old. That, you know, chapter of my life ended at a certain point, and I went on and was filmmaker, no complaints. But suddenly to get this opportunity in my 60s, all of us, to go back and do something that we really wanted to do when we were 16, and people are digging it and we're enjoying the hell out of it, and we are pushing ourselves far harder than we ever did at 16 in our 60s to prove that we can do rock and roll and we love rock and roll. That's just one small thing. I don't care what it is. If you want to write, if you want to make a film, if you know, still trying to find that girl that you fell in love with in high school and you know she's out there and you're going to keep going till you, don't give up your dreams. You never know when it's going to happen. And some people get it early in life and then spend the rest of their life chasing it. And then there's some people that go, you know what, this is never going to happen. Wrong. It can happen. You just can't give up. And there's something about having that energy and that belief in yourself. And I think that is important on a much grander scale than just the movies and the things that you create and leave behind. It's what hopefully somebody, you know, will hear and go, yeah, I'm glad I heard that today. I needed that, you know, just like a good church, you know, sermon. You know, give me some sound bites that I can walk out of here. Don't sit there and read passages from the Bible that I can't relate to. Give me something out of there that I can go out and go, yeah, you know, let me try that come Monday. All that stuff I think is so important. And I love when, you know, movies can have that thing or a character that you can identify with in a way that's like, yeah, that's exactly what I do, you know, and whoa, what would I do if I'm in this spacecraft with this alien or whatever? How would I get out of there? Would I be behind the wall? Would I be under something? What would I do? And we're not consciously thinking about it, but we're certainly experiencing it with the character if they're relatable.
Right.
But if you cast wrong, you got somebody you don't give a shit about, and they're just good looking, or they're quirky, or they're overacting, and you zone out from the movie, there's no experience.
I'm not sure how you feel about this, but you know, the landscape for film has changed a great deal. You know, everything is all about franchises, especially with the superhero movies, which took a long time to get that respect, if you will, that I believe that always deserved. But once that had changed, everything became about, you know, what's the next big thing? And that's always been Hollywood's trend. You know, this is huge. Let's get another one just like that. Instead of focusing on something original, let's try to develop that and create a whole new franchise, which very few have lasted this long. Mission Impossible being one, Die Hard up until the last film, and several other properties. So I had heard a conversation about someone who said that it'll probably a long time before we get the next George Lucas, the one that's going to come in and it's going to change cinema forever. Because you know, the studios who are looking to make these movies are more focused on what's popular right now, what's big and what's guaranteed to make more money. Because if you take an original property, you know, you're taking a chance, and that's not a chance that they are willing to take to lose money after they spend so much, you know, time and effort on it and no one wants to go see it. You know, I think one of the biggest examples of something like that was with the Wachowskis when they shot Jupiter Ascending, I think is what it was called, if I'm not mistaken.
Like that,
almost $200 million, no one saw it. So that was a huge risk that went nowhere. And so I understand that approach, but I'm not sure if you have any like if you feel like that's, you know, if that's something that could still happen, hopefully in the immediate future. Because I mean, you're out there in the industry. I'm not sure if you've heard some things about how things are starting to pick up with original content, because even some of these creators who are bringing these content, it takes a long time for them to finally get someone to say yes, but then to get them to stick with it is a whole different story.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not sure what your thought process on that, if you feel like that's probably never going to happen again with getting another George Lucas, or if you think that may be a possibility somewhere down the line.
It always is a possibility. There's always going to be somebody eventually that will do something that nobody will believe could possibly work,
Right.
or come up with something that unique. But what I've learned personally, and using my Jason Lives as a perfect example of how it happened, and I was not a conscious plan. It only became conscious as the years have gone on, was that I combined genres.
Right.
I took a slasher movie and I put humor and self-relevance to it, and tried to make a roller coaster ride of just fun that also had the horror element in it. Why? Because that was cool to me, and I was incredibly blessed that I had really total control. All I had to do was bring back Jason from the dead. That was the marching orders. Frank Mancuso Jr., love him till the day I died, that he gave me that. And they were in a desperate strait. They needed somebody to come in a year earlier than they normally would release a movie, see if they could get their audience back some way. I didn't think I was going to necessarily do that. All I could do is what I knew how to do and throw it in there and try to make a real movie out of it. As the years have gone on, things like, James Cameron, incredible filmmaker and stuff. But when he decided he was going to do the Titanic, and it went on and on and on, the production, this whole town was like, this is going to be like Kevin's Gate. He's going on, and the asshole deserves it, and all this shit. And I remember going to a screening at 20th Century Fox, before the movie opened. And this is an all, kind of, I don't want to say sarcastic, but jaded audience of industry people. And for 3 hours and 20 minutes, I think that thing was, nobody moved. Everybody was like, oh my God. I mean, the man did Romeo and Juliet. He put so much in there that grounded. It wasn't just a disaster movie. He had spectacle like we hadn't seen. He had emotional things. He had a leading man that was charming and a beautiful lady. He had all the elements of great cinema. So much so, I took my 6-year-old daughter to see it, and I can't remember how old she was at the time, late 60s mother. My mother can't go 5 minutes without a cigarette. She sat there for 3 hours and 20 minutes. My 6-year-old, who couldn't get beyond a cartoon, sat there for 3 hours and 20 minutes. And I went, this shit works. And it was, obviously until Avatar, the biggest, motion picture blockbuster ever.
Right.
And to me, that was a, huge game changer, but not a lot of people could imitate that.
No.
And of course, he wanted to go, even bigger, more unique, further out there. Whether the rest of the avatars are going to work, or it's going to be like, you keep copying what was already successful and see if you can keep it going. And the people who break out and come up with something unique that everybody's going, I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work. That's been the history of movies, plays, anything since beginning of time. And my personal feeling is that we all want something that we haven't seen before, but somehow we can relate to it, that it somehow, has either it's the character or the basic Shakespearean, structure to it. There's something that grounds it that's more than just the gimmick of it. And people, again, my hero Frank Capra, would always say, don't copy copies, don't follow trends. If there's a movie that comes out this weekend, say it's a werewolf movie, and Monday morning, guess what? Any studio you go in, if that thing was a hit, we need a werewolf movie like now. Everybody is going to start greenlighting werewolf movies. Didn't we have one of those like 3 years ago? Go through the files. You threw it out. Throw it out. Who threw it out? I mean, it was like that when I was doing television too. ABC, NBC, CBS, whatever did well Sunday night, bang, Monday morning, all the networks were fighting to try to, find another one of those, to get going. But by the time you make them and the time it gets out there, the public has moved on. You're way behind the wave, but you get a deal, you get salary, you have something there that you're working on, and then they kind of, kill each other, basically. Some don't get made because the other ones got too far in production, or, like you end up having, two movies that are exactly the
Yeah.
same story, you know, trying
Yeah.
to figure out who's going to get there first and which one's going to be more successful. So that's always been a problem. But the thing with obviously the franchise movies is now it's like they've realized there's a brand that works, there's an audience, and we're not going to change it too much. There'll be some people that come in and do something fresh with it. And the truly talented filmmakers like Sam Raimi, when he did Spider-Man, knowing Sam as I do, I saw Sam all through that movie.
Yeah, same here.
I mean, his boyish quality, his sense of
Mm-hmm.
humor was there. Many of the other ones don't have it, you know, or you have characters that you don't care. You know, Robert Downey Jr. is great as Iron Man because you like him, you know,
Mm-hmm.
he helps ground those things. Then, of course, they preview it and, you know, their numbers are not top. So what do? They start adding more explosions, more action sequences and stuff. That's not what's going to save the movie. You know, you can't put bigger on bigger, you know, sugar on sugar on sugar. You know, you got to go back and say, where did we lose the structure? Is there anything we can do to pull the audience back into the movie through the characters or through a plot twist or something? No, that's too complicated. What we can do is blow up things bigger, you know, put new sound, you know, sound effects and things in there. And obviously it's the technology that
it's like the Roger Corman approach is what it sounds like to me, because that was his thing. You know, every 5 minutes, there's got to be something like this happening, you know, and that's basically what Hollywood has been doing pretty much for since forever, at least in the towards the 80s and whatever. That's really what I mostly picked up on. Well, you know, because you brought up Sam Raimi. This is the thing about filmmakers that I always love, and I think very few people who are filmmakers actually will pick up on that. You can always identify, you know, this is a Sam Raimi film, this is a Quentin film, this is a Spielberg movie. There's a sensibility they bring to their films that is very unique, that it's easy to identify, even though the film might not be something they've never done, they may have not done before, but you can still pick up that identity of, like, that's a Spielberg project. You know, Spielberg is doing, I think, his very first musical with the remake of West Side Story. When I saw the trailer, I was like, this looks like a Steven Spielberg movie. Like, you can pick up those sensibilities, and you know, it's nice to see that they're taking their approach with it, but putting in their DNA into the project. It's sad to see that there are some really good potential directors and writers who have really good projects that they've done that no one's ever seen, but you know that it's a very unique piece of work that they put together, but they've never been given the opportunity to be able to replicate that again with other genres, because you know, it's always been bogged down by people who are putting their hands in the product, and they're just saying, no, we've got this now, we'll take care of it for you. Or that's not how they would say it, but you know, they put their hands on it, and they pretty much, you know, tainted whatever the original vision was and make something else entirely different. And then when the film fails, the director gets the blame, and then you get the boot.
The actors also get the blame too.
I was going to say that next.
Yeah, I know. Did you see that so and so? Oh, that was a thing with Kate Hudson. Yeah, bombed. Yeah,
right.
You know, well, I'm not going to hire her on mine. She did nothing. She did a great job. It had nothing to do with her. They released it on a weekend when there was, you know, 3 blockbusters or something.
Right.
But they'll remember the failure and they'll blame it on who they associate with the movie. Yeah. Which of course really killed the star system. You know, it used to be if you put Tom Cruise in something or whoever, you know, that guaranteed box office. Not anymore. Yeah. And even the stars, you know, Stallone I always use because I've always loved him. Yeah. I was in a film making course and he came in with this movie about a boxer that was kind of based on his fight, you know, his struggles as an actor, but he made it about a boxer, and he showed it all of us and we went, wow, that's great, you know. And it's like, what do you think? It's gonna work, you know.
Oh, so you saw the film like so you saw that movie well before it was released to the public?
Yes.
Oh, really? Oh, so was this out in Los Angeles when he showed you stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because I was in a school called Sherwood Oaks Experimental College,
which was
put together by this crazy dreamer, Gary Shuzet. His brother Ron Shuzet was one of the co-writers of Alien. You know, Ron had a pretty good career of you know, as a screenwriter, but Gary was one of those guys that was fearless. He'd go up to any celebrity, and he was a nerdish, goofy looking guy. But he'd knock on their front door, he'd find out where they lived, and he'd talk about the school he had with all these people that wanted to learn about, you know, the the different aspects of cinema. And he got some of the biggest of the big to come in there. This is long before colleges were bringing in, celebrities and known artists to do it. He got Lucille Ball to do, a course on comedy. I studied for 8 weeks under Rod Serling. I studied screenwriting under Sid Field before he wrote his book on screenplay, which is sort of the Bible of the industry. You want to read
I remember
screenplay? Read Sid Field's book. We were the guinea pigs as kids back there. Martin Scorsese came in with Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. That was an hour longer than the cut, that everybty else saw.
So wait, so you saw the original length of that film?
Director's cut, yeah.
So was that at the time when you saw it, and I'm assuming you saw it when it was released out to the main public, did you notice a difference in with the impact the story had with the original cut that you saw compared to the theatrical cut? Was there a distinction between the two of them?
Not huge, just more scenes and different things, more aspects of the characters and stuff. Like, you brought up John Frankenheimer. I could go on about John. I know a lot about the behind the scenes of Island of Dr. Moreau. No, I was going to do a movie with Brando. I spent 3 hours with Brando in a room. I mean, to be in his presence for 3 hours, basically, Colonel Kurtz and The Godfather, and and have him, just kind of sit there like Jabba the Hutt, Jabba the Hutt, and just eat some of the food. Food, man. And he was a genius, and he was crazy, and he was all those things, and John, would go on to me about these stories about him. And then later he said, no, it wasn't really Brando, it was Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer was the pain in the ass. There's a documentary coming out, on Val that he's finally, I guess, has all this footage of stuff he shot, and has kind of come to the confessional period of his life where, I was an asshole who's changed now. And of course he's, in a very bad state, but they get empowered and all these things happen. And Brando was the king of that. I mean, he was the greatest living actor according to the publicity, and he knew he wasn't, but he knew he was considered that, and he could get away, with anything. But I'm working on this movie Prophecy with John Frankenheimer. I was the mutated bear in there. I had to learn how to run on all fours, with 150 pounds of hydraulics. John was like this legendary director who was old school with the boots and the, come on, get over there, get out of the rolls first thing in the morning. The guy, chauffeur would open the door for him. I mean, it was an amazing thing to see. But we had Roman Coppola, Francis's son, on the set, there with us. And at one point, and Talia Shire was the actress. At one point, John said to me, "You're a filmmaker, right?" "Yeah. Gonna go see this movie that Francis did called Apocalypse Now." I said, "Really? How?" He goes, and we went to the Bruin Theater in Westwood. If you've seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that's the Bruin Theater.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And seeing this movie with an audience, of course, had never seen it, hearing the helicopters come from behind you, all the surround sound stuff for the first time, all of that was just inspiring. But the great thing was going out into that forecourt afterwards, and Francis, like a completely insecure child, and this is the man who made The Godfather. What did you think? Did that work? How was the thing? Was it clear about the character thing? Because we're not sure if we're going to keep it. Unbelievable. I mean, and later when I saw Redux, the same thing. He went to a screening, he was there, he was moving around also. Do you think we should have, put the French thing in, or was it better without it? But which again taught me so much about how you have to really still be open and an artist and listen to what people are saying, about it. Spielberg got to a certain point in his career, and I've talked to many people who work with him, have worked with him consistently. Steven's amazing. Steven was who we all wanted to be, name above the title, Steven Spielberg. It was, as a young director, it was like, God, that would be great. And then at a certain point, the power and the producing and all the rest of that put him in a position where, he had to try to figure out how to make things bigger and bigger and bigger. And one of the things that unfortunately happened was he stopped doing previews because he didn't want to have anybody say something different than what he wanted. And he couldn't end a movie. It was like, at a certain point, I just saw Terminal recently again, because I was curious to go back and see it again.
Did you still like it?
Seeing it again,
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I don't,
Okay.
it wasn't like a film I enjoyed.
Yeah.
It bothered me so much because I just felt so bad for the Tom Hanks character. I said, this is too much torture,
Yeah.
And then, of course, it's so sugary and artificial
Mm-hmm.
that, it's very hard to relate and connect to it. But from a filmmaking standpoint, from the standpoint of a guy going, that's not CGI extras, and that's not a set. That's the, he took over the real thing, and he did. And some of the sets that they did build were enormous.
Yeah.
But the point is, it had an ending, and it was a great ending. And you kind of get ready to grab the remote, and then there's another one, and another one, and another one. And I don't know if it was from the time of AI or even prior to that, that it's like he can't finish it. He's got more to say, more to say, more to say.
Yeah.
And in storytelling, going all the way back to us sitting around the campfire and having, the caveman go on about the confrontation with the dinosaur.
Mm-hmm.
Once that dinosaur is, dead, that's the end of the story. You don't go on about how you cleaned off the club and you did this and then
cut the meat up and
came up
cook
and,
it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's over. We heard it, done. But that's the thing again, power can sometimes take an artist and say, no, I want this and this and this. And they've got the power to do that.
Yeah.
But I think we as audiences, we just want to get thrown into the screen, get thrown into the music, whatever it is, the concert, the play, whatever, and just go for a ride. And at a certain point, there is a catharsis, a conclusion that feels like, yes, that's where you want to let it go. And then let the rest of the movie play out in your head.
Yeah.
And this is something I emphasize constantly to film students. You have to get the audience to make the movie here. It's not about what you put on the screen. And that's the thing that so many filmmakers forget. It's so much cooler. And Blair Witch was a perfect example of that. You didn't see stuff, and we imagined it. And the hype around the movie created an excitement. And, there are movies that's what they do. Do something that you just didn't expect, or you start like with Psycho and you kill the leading lady right at the top.
Yeah.
And that's Janet Leigh. Janet Leigh, you don't kill her. And, very, very violent way. And you spend the rest of the movie so tense that you're going to see something even worse, in there. But it's that artist artist side of people who just know somehow inherently, let's try this and this and this. Do they know consistently? Does anybody know consistently? No. Every movie would be a hit. Every book would be a hit. Every song would be a hit. We all keep playing with the formulas in ways that hopefully seem fresh. And then for somebody to go, yeah, I love that. You go, well, you know what melody that is? What? That's exactly from that. He stole it from that. Wow, I didn't know that. I still like the song though, It's like you can't come up with anything original. You've got to
I agree.
borrow stuff and put it together in a different packaging, in a different, slightly different structure, it may be that you know, but it still gets down to three basic rules: setup, confrontation, and the payoff, the conclusion, the wrap up of the thing. Something you promised in the first act that the character wanted. Do they get it at the end, or they not get it at the end, or they get better? Rocky didn't win, but he did go the distance. And that's all that ultimately mattered. That little speech that he does with Talia Shire in the bed, they weren't going to shoot it. In fact, he had the promise, and so did John Avildsen, the director, that would be one take and one shot.
Yeah.
If you watch that thing, that's what it is. But the whole fucking meat of the whole movie is in that scene when he says about wanting to be there at the end. And still standing so that people will know I'm not some bum. It's such a great life lesson for all of us. And I can't tell you how many times in my career I was in my head, felt like everything was falling down, and I kept picturing Stallone as Rocky pulling himself up on the ropes again. And everybody's going, stay down, stay down. We got to pull ourselves up. I mean, that to me is what life is about. Don't let it beat you down,
There was one integral scene too that I always took away a lot from too, is in that fight scene between Apollo and Rocky, where Apollo just beat the shit out of him and knocked him down, and then Apollo thought he had won, and then Rocky's getting back up and he puts the mouth back and like, come on, and then you can see Apollo's face go like, fuck. Just that, I've always loved that particular scene because that at the time I just loved the fact that he was able to overcome that beating and still keep going forward. But you take that as a metaphor and you realize that that's how people have to go through that, and it's not a very easy thing to go through.
No,
And that's not necessarily physically, but mentally as well too. There's a lot of mental things that people have to overcome. But that movie, I think for a lot of people, really connected with them because they understood the character journey. That was mostly what they connected with. Certainly, I connected with. But yeah, but so I was. I'm also curious to hear about your thoughts on something with regard to the amount of work that you've done that have certainly influenced a lot of other people. And one of the people that have talked on more than one occasion about that certainly has made you have made an influence on, but you learned it after the fact, which that was Kevin Williamson, who saw he was his favorite movie, I believe he said, was Halloween, but when he saw Jason Lives, he was like, oh, you can do that. So that idea sparked for him to take on a project, to write a project, which ended up becoming Scream. But at the time, it was called Scary Movie, which I didn't know until I actually listened to an interview you had done. That I'm not sure if and correct me if I'm wrong. I think I heard you say that I think your agent gave you the script, or Kevin reached out to you and gave you the script, and at the time it was called Scary Movie.
Yeah, the agent. Yeah, in
Okay,
fact, somewhere in this room is that original script.
Oh, you have that? Okay.
Because obviously I've been given so many scripts over the years, the decades to read, and some of them, you end up trashing because you can't carry all that weight around, fit into a back of a semi. But certain ones that went on, and I was either a chump who didn't take the bait, and that was one of them. But I read it, and the agent said, well, here's something that I think you should like. And I did. I loved it. But I went, I've done this. When it started, I'm reading the first scene that Drew Barrymore ultimately did, and I'm going, it's the same flavor of what I was doing. So I said, what else you got? And then I started reading all these other scripts, that I didn't like. I can't remember if it was during that time that Truman Show was one of those. I know at one point in my career it was 7. I mean, there was a lot of things that.
Oh, so you were offered 7 at one point?
Well, not offered. They were scripts that were going around.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And, because at a certain point, what happens is somebody writes a script, somebody thinks it's great, and then they start sending it to stars who say no. And then they go, okay, let's go down to the second string of stars, and they're saying no. And then you're taking it to studios. Who's going to be in it? We don't know yet. No. And then it kind of goes out, blasts out to everybody. And agents then have to sort of decide, well, this client might like this or this client. And then it's their job, to try to convince the producers of the movie to do it. And many times there were, those situations. Basically, Scary Movie was one of those ones that was like a super low budget thing. I really did have a shot at it. But it just, as I said, at the time, I went, I want to do something different. I've tried to make my whole career about whatever I just did, make the next one something else. After Friday was, Date with an Angel. And then, of course, I was in a company that completely collapsed. So that never had a chance. And it went through 9 screenings with audiences, and they kept changing it. I'm going, wait a minute, you're taking the arms and legs off my child. What do you do? Had no choice. Then back into Stephen King's realm, and then, into true crime, and into AIDS and global warming, and then into Christmas. And, I kept changing things. So, Scary Movie ultimately is one of those scripts that, as a couple of months went by and I was looking at all this material that I didn't like, I went, what's going on with the movie? He goes, Wes Craven just grabbed it. I go, okay, Wes is going to do a good job. All right, next. Having no idea, as no one did, it was going to end up being such an incredible franchise. And Wes Craven is also one of those people. Mick Garris did an incredible thing years ago and created a dinner group called the Masters of Horror. Well, actually, Guillermo del Toro came up with that title at one of the get-togethers.
You mean Guillermo del Toro, right?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, I was like, who's Palermo? Okay, yeah. Okay,
sorry.
It's all right.
We had a group, and originally it was like maybe 14, 15 people that, was kind of all the who's who at that time, Rob Zombie and John Landis, and Bryan Singer was in there, and
oh, really? Okay.
Tom Holland.
Oh, that's right, he was. Yeah.
All these people.
Yeah.
And then it just became like, I don't know, 50, 60 people at some of these dinners, because of all the, Paranormal Activity, that guy, and all the, the people from the various, latest franchises, I'm
You
blanking
talking
on
about
the name
Saw?
right.
What was James Wan a
Exact
part?
Saw, exact,
Yeah,
all that. So, and then at a certain point, Mick just said, it's just gotten way too big, and you can't visit with everybody like we could as a smaller group. Um, but one night I was sitting next to Wes Craven, and I turned to him and told him, the story about what happened. And he goes, I know you did Friday the 13th, and I think you did Stephen King thing. I said, yeah. He goes, well, what else did you do? And I said, well, I kind of went into television, and that was because I wanted to make movies constantly. I wanted to make 3 movies a year and not 1 movie every 3 years. And Wes is going, and I said, what? He goes, I want your career. I go, oh, fuck you. Come on. You're Wes, name above the title, Craven. I mean, he goes, Tom, let me tell you something. I want to do other things. I didn't go into this business just to be a horror director. But as things go, those are the things that are successful. I did a movie about composing music. It didn't get, it didn't
Oh, yeah,
work.
was that Music of the Heart or something like that with Gloria Estefan
Right.
and I believe Meryl Streep, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And he said every one I did, it didn't work. And so what they give you, and if you want to keep working, are the things that people can relate to. That they know you can do this, and they know it's great. So he stayed within obviously the Freddys and the Screams, and he obviously made some great other movies. I mean, his what was the thing with on the airplane?
Red Eye.
Red Eye, yes.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Hitchcockian suspense stuff in there. Another one didn't quite work.
No.
But he said, you're doing all these things that, because, when it gets down to it, when you're a filmmaker, that's what you want to do. And I said, but, Wes, I didn't choose this. I mean, I guess I did, but it sort of chose me. It was the chance of, the next one was like, well, what else you got? Oh, let me do one of those. And because the miniseries that I did when I first started in television was #1 that year, his biggest movie, they gave me all the best material. They gave me the stars. They gave me all the bells and whistles I could want, but in a genre that I had no desire to play in TV movies. I wouldn't see the movies I was making. They were just not, my passion.
So you never actually went back to see some of those old television films you've done in the past?
I mean, there's a few that are on DVDs,
right.
Blu-rays or whatever, that I go back, like, Murder in Greenwich. I'm actually very proud of, and I had Chris Maloney, who was sort of like my De Niro. We did a number of movies together, and I knew how he thought, he knew how I thought, which was great. And Robert Forster was great. We shot it in New Zealand, and it was, I was setting up, like 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units per location, shoot, set up the next one, shoot, set up the next one, shoot, it was crazy the way we were doing it. But I wanted a movie that just, really had cuts and edge to it and stuff. So things like that, every so often I'll go back and go, yeah, I guess I was good then. I kind of knew what I was doing then because I was insane. But who saw it? I mean, you can rent it, but there's so many of these things that you make, and it was like in the silence. They would just make these 1 reel, 2 reel movies that would just go out there, and then so many of them were lost and gone. But it was just another way to try to entertain people. And this isn't going to last. This movie thing's not going to last. People want to go to the theater. Of course, everybody's wrong. And so it's kind of been that way where you do stuff, and it's not necessarily you choose it. It's sort of like, oh, okay, that opportunity happens, so you kind of go that direction. And if you happen to have a success, bang, we'll hire you as Rocky, we'll hire you as Rambo. I know you love comedy, I know you're funny. No, Expendables, you got to win again, because again, it's Rocky, Rambo, that type of guy. And that's the box to put him in. Wes, that's exactly what he was talking about. And it's one of the curses of when you are successful in something, they want more of the same. It's because he knows how to do that. And it's very hard to get a break, if you keep changing up stuff, unless you just, for some miraculous reason, manage to make a hit out of that thing that's not your normal genre. And then they start going, oh, gee, what else can you do? And there's been obviously those situations that do come up. Who's the director who did 500 Days of Summer? Ryan? No,
it's oh Jesus, I'm gonna forget. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's he did a movie that I saw recently. I forgot what it's called. Let me look at my phone. I'm going to cheat right now.
But am
But
I
I know
not wrong? He ended up doing one of the
no, was it Mark Waters? No. That I'm wrong. That's not who directed
but
it.
didn't he end up doing one of the Star Wars?
Oh, you're thinking of Ryan Johnson, right?
Yeah.
No, he didn't direct 500 Days of Summer. Ryan
What did he
Johnson
do?
directed Looper, and he also directed Brick with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. The director that did hold on one second, because I know
I
the
know
name
he did
escapes me.
something big.
He did. Give me one segundo here because I have it here. Yep,
I'm old. The memory goes.
Mark Webb. That's who it is.
Yeah.
Mark
Okay.
Webb.
And then what did he go on to do?
Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And then after that, he had been doing some other stuff, which I honestly have not been keeping too much up on. But he did Gifted with I believe it was with Chris Evans, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that.
But I swear somebody did like a small little independent comedy, and they ended up, I thought, doing one of the Star Wars episodes or something like that. One of the huge big franchise.
Oh, you think of Colin Trevorrow? Is that who you're referring to? Because Colin Trevorrow did a short, a very really good movie called Safety Not Guaranteed. And with the success of that film and how well it was received, he ended up doing Jurassic World, and then he was going to start to direct the third Star Wars movie of the current line right now. But he ended up not doing it for all these stories that you've heard about, where I guess they didn't like the story that he was coming up with, which sounded a lot better than what we got. But it was I believe I think that's who you may be talking about. But Ryan Johnson is a guy who had directed
mixing all these things together.
It's possible. Yeah, I've done that too on many occasions. I said Steven Spielberg directed a Francis Ford Coppola. I mean, it's just different things that come in. So yeah, I understand where you're coming from. But I believe you may be talking about Colin Trevorrow.
The point is the same: is that every so often, by a miracle, you end up doing some little movie and you do it well, and somebody says, we're going to put you up for this, and it's like you don't have a snowball chance in hell, but somehow the ones they wanted said no. And it's like, I don't know, he gave a really good pitch. I don't know, he did. I think you give him a good DP. We got to get a production designer and then put him in there. And of course, the person's talented. It's the opportunity that needed to happen. And, they go off and make it. And of course, if it doesn't work, guess what? Your next job is really hard to get. If it works, you're a genius. And, you get more time to play in the play yard.
Yeah, I think I spoke with the director Jesse V. Johnson a while back, and I was pointing about some of his work that he's done in the past, because in the last couple of years, he started getting a lot more work because of his work that he's done with the actor Scott Adkins, who's been in the industry for a number of years now. But when I was pointing out about his career of things he's done in the past, I was letting him up. I was being upfront. I saw this one movie, didn't really like it that much, but I didn't know you had directed it. But I could see the progression you've made throughout the years with where you started to where you are now. And he said, "Well, you're only as good as your last work." I understand that concept. I don't necessarily agree with it entirely, because I think I'm sure his opinion may have changed now. But I mean, at the time when I thought about it, I understood where he was coming from, but I just didn't fully connect with that thought process, because we've mentioned before about actors who are fantastic in a movie, they'll be fantastic in one film, the next film they're not so great, but we don't know what happened behind the scenes. Maybe they had some horrible traumatic experience during that production, some family members
could have a terrible director, could have a producer that overrode the director and came in and talked to them, say, no, I don't care what he's telling you. This, I know, I bought the book. This is the way the character needs to be done. Now they don't know who to listen to. I mean, there's so many things that can happen along the way. And do most of the people care? No. But do we care? Yeah, because it's like, how do we learn from what happened that went wrong? And how do we learn from what happened that went right that we can do, when we get into situations?
And that's one thing I've also noticed too, with when you look at like one of the biggest team-ups lately in the last 15, 20 years or more, so I should say, is with DiCaprio and Scorsese. In the last couple of films they've made together have been landmark, really very successful films, well received and so on. And the one thing I didn't notice at that time was that with De Niro and Scorsese working together, they've made a lot of great movies. Whether they were all hits or not at the time didn't really matter to a point, because later on they were well regarded and people have picked up on that, which is a very unique thing to be in that position where people didn't care if you worked, 50 years ago, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that movie was amazing. It's like, well, it would have been great if you had told me that 50 years ago. But, what I was trying to get at is that I noticed that there are some people who tend to work in the same circle of people that they are producing these movies, and I didn't understand why. I just assumed there was more like a well, that's my brother and that's my friend. You know, I'm just gonna keep them in the loop. But then I come to realize that it's actually a little more complex. It's more because they know how I work. They know what how to adjust certain things for me as far as getting the right script or getting the right people involved in the project, so we can filter out all the nonsense and bring the people who are wanting to work, because we want that good experience. We don't want the bullshit of drama that's going to ruin the experience of making this movie, because we already got enough stress as it is already making the film. We don't need any more added to that. So when I started picking up on certain people who have worked together on a consistent basis, I just assume it was just that we're doing very well together. Let's just keep working together. And that's not always the case in some scenarios. I think it's mostly just that we know what works and we're going to stick with that, because if anyone else comes in that little circle we have, they may ruin that.
Well,
So
this
I'm
is
not sure if
yeah,
that's something. I was going to ask you, is that something that you've kind
a
of
lot of
picked up on?
validity in that. Yeah, I mean, it's something that obviously teaching at a film school,
Right.
I emphasize constantly. I said, when you guys are making these movies together, there's an element of trust that starts to happen.
Yeah.
There are certain people that they are, friggin' alpha dogs themselves. They don't want to hear, they don't want to collaborate, they want to make their own thing. If they're going to work on your movie, they're going to be on their phone texting, and they're not really going to be there. But there are going to be other ones that looking for a leader, that are great, that are talented, but they themselves don't feel like they've got the same sort of alpha dog thing that maybe you have, or maybe you're not even an alpha dog yourself, but you've got a DP that you've teamed up with who is like, I love what he comes up with, and I'm great with the actors. You start to find out like a chemistry with a certain group of people,
Mm-hmm.
and you begin trust is the key thing. And just like with working with actors, if they don't trust you, they're not going to give you the kind of stuff they would give somebody who they felt comfortable in their hands.
Yeah.
So it's, actors have a lot to do lots of times if they're named to make the call who they're going to work with. They'd rather work with somebody they worked with before. Like when I talk to Brando, none of these guys can direct except Elliot could Sam. Everybody else is a bum. And he held on to that because his great work came from Kazan back in the days, from theater, on into movies. He would tear directors apart, and because he could somehow get away with it, and he got paid $1 million a week. But in building up a crew around you, you try to find people that you not feel, they have your back. They're going to stay there those 18 hours and not complain because they want it to happen. Just coming off of this Vengeance 2, fan-funded film, it was just great to see a core of, I don't know, 10, 12 people at the most, everybody working for free. Some of the people were in the movie because, they, put in money, like you put in, I don't know, $1,000 or $500. I can't remember what the amount was, but you got to be in the movie and get killed by Jason, and I mean, this is how they sort of built it up. Some girl was there who, bought one of the Vengeance 1 DVDs, and she was the one that found the golden ticket, like Willy Wonka. And the golden ticket gave her, a flight, to Seattle and a chance to be killed by Jason. And then she was so in, heaven with that she stayed on and just kind of became a PA. Sweetest, most wonderful girl, and just, I mean, lit up around me and CJ and Darcy DeMoss and the people that, were there that were, also from, other movies and stuff that came in and were doing cameos and stuff. And it was just a great opportunity to be around a young group. Nobody was a, top professional by any stretch of the imagination. They were doing it because they loved it. They were, just loved cinema, grew up on these movies, and they were kind of figuring it out as they went. So there was a real guerrilla filmmaking style to it, which I saw in the first one. There was a kind of a, clusterfuck of how we're going to do this and what we're going to do. But they got enough material, they could cut it into something, and, it found a following, and they have the opportunity of having the title Friday the 13th or Jason Voorhees, because nobody owns those right now. Until this lawsuit gets resolved, it's free game. Once it does, I don't know what's going to happen to those films, if they'll just say, cease and desist, if they'll threaten lawsuits, whatever. I don't think that will happen to them, but it is given an opportunity to so many young filmmakers that they would never get otherwise. to go and make a movie. And those of us who were part of that genre go, you know what, fuck it, let's let's support them, and I do that with the young filmmakers too, that it's like anything I can do to open the door or help or give advice or whatever, you pass on, what and you pass on, hopefully, I didn't get this, but I want you to, to have this. My son, and I have to share this story because I think it's so important with the business. Sometimes you don't get to hear these kinds of things. Is, my son went to Dodge College, and he graduated. I said, I'm going to make 2 phone calls to 2 ADs that I know and see if they have any opportunities as a PA that you might be able to get on. One of them was Frank Capra Jr., who said, well, I don't have anything at the moment, but I think I've got something. And then he called a couple of weeks later and he says, your son's still available? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've got this movie called Drive, Ryan Gosling. So my son went from film school on to Drive. Ryan Gosling put an arm around him, treated him like his best buddy. The director and the DP fought furiously through the whole production about who was going to be the alpha dog in terms of whose shot was better and stuff.
Oh, Nicholas Ref. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yep.
So despite all of that conflict, craziness, love, great producers and all that came out as I think, a classic film noir. Yeah. I mean, just no question, there was something really old school film noir about it.
Yeah.
And that led to another thing. So literally for the last 10 years, he's been doing all these different things. One of those that just happened a couple of years ago is the morning show on one of the first Apple series.
Yeah,
shows.
with Jennifer Aniston, right?
Yep, and Reese Witherspoon.
And Steve Carell. Was Steve Carell in that one too? Yeah, okay. Yes.
So, again, my son, just a PA on there, but he's a key PA and he does pretty much everybody's job, because when somebody can't do something, Shane, would you do this? And he runs and does it. He's, incredibly energetic and incredibly passionate about it.
Yeah.
And somebody noticed that he was taking lifts way out to this location. And they're going, why are you doing that? And he goes, well, my car fell apart and I really don't have the money. The crew said, for Christmas, we're going to take, pass a hat basically for fun for get Shane a car. Just before a take, Reese Witherspoon said, hold on a second. And she come over to Shane and she put $1,000 in his hand. And she said, if I was your age and somebody did this to me, I'd never forget it. I just want to do this for you. Jennifer Aniston heard that. She gave money. Everybody, at the end of the show, he had obviously not a new car, but a really good
working vehicle.
Acura or something, I guess.
Okay.
With a ribbon around it, from the crew and the cast and stuff. And I thought, that's incredible. These people don't need to do this. It's like most of the time you don't even know the names of the PAs and stuff. But there's that side of show business that still exists.
That we don't hear a lot about, though. That's why, like, I wouldn't have known that, if I hadn't talked to somebody about this or listened, to look for that stuff. Like I'm glad
they don't
that's
talk about it either. I mean,
I understand,
they don't tell what I did. That's what they do. They have the money, of course, to do that. Yeah. Other people probably put in $1 or $5 or whatever, but it doesn't matter. We all everybody felt like they gave, to something that was something they didn't have to do. And that's the kind of stuff that I think, that's where the spirit of we are a team, we are a family can come from. And all these shows too that are being done, both my daughter and my son were on Yellowstone.
Oh, I know the show,
Kevin Costner series, and right in the middle of the friggin' pandemic, but they had to follow all the rules. Everybody had to be tested daily. If something happened, somebody got sick, the show would shut down for a day or two or whatever, and keep checking and then, keep going. But one of the things they did was they brought up all these people and they put them up in motels, hotels, and whatever, and basically paid them their day rate on the weekend to stay in the fucking motel room and not go into town and possibly get exposed. So they were getting paid to not work and not go anywhere, have their food brought in or whatever, because, the show must go on. And they did not want to have, that COVID thing. And, both of them came back without it. The show, can't imagine how much money they lost on all of those, extras, all the shows that are kind of having to deal with all the COVID stuff. it costs so much more now.
Yeah.
We don't know where all this is going to go.
No.
Ultimately, we don't know if movies are going to continue to be foremost streamed and then only certain ones will go in the theater. If they're going to do what's starting to happen, put them out, on streaming at the same time they go in the theater, which I think is a mistake because people will keep their lazy asses at home instead of going into that experience. Give it 2 weeks or something, then do that if that's important. But of course, the streaming people go, no, we want to have that audience right at the top. We don't want to lose that to it. So it's follow the money.
Well, I think Paramount Plus is practicing something where they are going to release their films in theaters. I think one of the first ones that I heard that was going to be doing this here was the new Top Gun movie, Top Gun Maverick, where they're going to release it in theaters for 45 days. I don't know how they determined that number, but that was the report that I read. Release it for 45 days and then release it into Paramount Plus after that 45-day period. So it's like it seems like it's hard for me to comprehend how that's actually going to work out. What if the film is very successful in theaters? Are they going to just take it out after 45 days? Or, it's I'm not really sure how they really plan on doing that, because it's a very it's uncharted territories at this point here on how that stuff would work.
Yeah, but we still, before all this happened, it still was movies would go in. If you could last a second week, that was pretty amazing.
Right.
So 45 days is like, yeah, dream on. You're not the Titanic. It just goes to further and further, out to the smaller and smaller houses and stuff, or some theaters can only afford, to buy it, and they'll play it for a couple of weeks or whatever. There's so many different ways, movies have had to exist as the years have gone on now. Hold on 1 second. These are always stupid calls that I get that are spam and things. The way we are now is that we've been, basically led to believe that we can just sit home and it comes to us. So, and we got bigger TV sets, and you want it to feel like a big screen. Move your chair up, come closer to the screen so you're not going to see anything but the screen. Do whatever you got to do to make it feel like a movie experience. But when I recently went to go see Quiet Place 2, which I really love. John is a director. He's just really smart.
Yeah, he came out of nowhere. I didn't expect him to be that good, to be honest.
Nobody did. Yeah. But some of the best directors are actors because they know how to, I don't know, they just know how to make the other actor look good. They've been watching movies for years themselves, and they just kind of inherently have it. But what that particular screening that I went to was at the AMC cinemas, and they've created
out in Burbank.
Huh?
Is it AMC out in Burbank?
Yes.
Okay.
And they on certain AMC theaters, they've installed this thing called Prime.
Yeah.
And Prime is a sound system that for something like Quiet Place 2 couldn't have been greater. To hear these tiny sounds, so distinct, so clearly, you're not going to get that at home. I don't give a shit. You don't have 40 speakers around you. And, some people don't care. Those of us who love the movie experience, that's great.
Yeah.
The quality of the image is a little better, not day and night. It wasn't like going from VHS to HD, but it certainly looked good, more depth of field, through shots and things that you might not have had normally. But in general, I think like we did with 3D and CinemaScope and stuff, there's gimmicks that help kind of pull the audiences back in, and then they go, this was kind of fun going out. But if it's going to cost you $150 to go out and see a movie and pay for the babysitter and go to dinner afterwards and buy the popcorn,
and that's just for the tickets, mind you.
Fuck that. It's like, you're not going to get the regular folks.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know how affluent all of the kids are today that, have the money, that don't want to stay anything but stay home, man. I got to go, we got to go do something, and these are the people that thought, why can't I stop this? I cannot believe this. Got to be another block I can put on this damn thing. The whole point always was, let's get out, go to the drive-in together,
right.
Fuck off in the car, do whatever you're going to do in there, go as a group, get stoned, go see Cheech and Chong's movie.
Yeah.
There was that communal thing that being young and going as a group and really enjoying that and going for pizza afterwards or whatever. Will we get that back? I think in some form. I
hope so. Yeah.
You have to, you have to break away from your parental ties at some point. You're going to take peer pressure far more than you're going to take, the worry that dad's going to ground you, or, and school has changed. I mean, now you're learning at home. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, I was trying to teach a film class on Zoom for a year. It was a bitch, man. I mean,
Was
looking at
was
20
it really
students in
uncomfortable
little
for that whole
squares.
process?
Well, it's not just uncomfortable. It's like you cannot connect. It's like
Mhm.
you're trying to, I don't know, like the joke about the Hollywood squares. I mean, all these little pictures of people, and at any given point, people can turn off their sound.
Yeah.
Suddenly the screen would go blank, because they shut off their camera and go and either go to the bathroom, go get something to eat, or who knows,
Mhm.
And so it's like, guys, you can't just walk out of a classroom. You can't do this here. I got to know you're hearing this material. What if I was one of those assholes that tested on everything I said? I'm not that kind of academic, but still there's stuff here. If you care, you should listen to, whether you
Yeah.
want to believe it or not. But what I want you to do is challenge me, come after me, say, that's bullshit, man. I saw something, smoke me out some way, because I want to hear you have some sort of opposition. So I know your opinion. And when you tell me your opinion, everybody else hears your opinion and goes, I love how you shut the professor down, man. That was great. You and I ought to do something together. Or, you know what? He said something I think was really great that you and I should do together, And it's that you've got to find people you can work with. And that's my objective. I'm
Right.
not looking for somebody to team up with. Every so often it can happen, you find some young talent and then you run into them years later and it's like, oh my God, I haven't seen you since film school, and you end up working together. But the whole point of this is it's a collaborative art form. You
Right.
need 80 people or 100 people or 2,000 people, whatever it is, to make this thing. And it's not like painting by yourself. It's not like writing a script by yourself. No opposition, nobody saying you're wasting too much money here. But once you take the money, now you owe. You've got to deliver. You've got to listen to these opinions. And as the old saying goes, assholes are like opinions. Everybody's got one. And if you get paid to be an executive and you are paid to have an opinion, doesn't matter how stupid it is, the filmer has to listen to it. Okay, let me see what I can do with that. No, you need to do this.
Yeah.
Okay, and you don't, you're called up. It's like, why didn't you listen to Mary's idea? I thought it was very good. It doesn't fit with the movie I wrote. It doesn't. Well, can you compromise? People are going to suffer that kind of thing of crazy ass opinions.
I was listening to a story because I know you've interacted with him before with Quentin Tarantino. There was an interesting story he had told about with Harvey Weinstein where and I think he did that with a lot of other people too, where he would come up with an idea knowing the system, how people would say, no, we don't want this. So he had to find a way to kind of manipulate the situation and getting them to think, well, when you came up to kind of get them to think that they came up with the idea, make them believe
Yeah.
that they've thought the idea
Yes.
was really good. And when you listen to these stories, or when he shares the stories rather, I always wonder, is that how he's able to keep his full, vision? Because virtually every film, with the exception of maybe one that he's ever released, has always been a box office hit. It has always been really well received. So he's like one of the very rare people in the industry that has the ability to say, it's going to be my way or the highway, and keep that consistent with him. Because I think him, Jim Cameron, are like one of the very few people in the industry that has not released a lot of movies, but virtually every film they've ever released has always been a big box office success, and have that power to be able to make that demand where it's their way or the highway. But what I've learned with Quentin, as I mentioned before, is that he's able to give get people who make these decisions to think that the ideas that he had, make them think that they've come up with it, so therefore it's going to be stay within the final product.
Yeah.
So it's like a hustle that I've learned that he has, that certainly has helped him. It's I always wondered when you ever interact with him, if you've ever picked up on certain those little like
Oh
approaches
God,
that he
yeah.
has. No.
Oh yeah. I mean, the thing about Quentin, for one, I mean, very seldom do I use the word genius, but he
Yeah.
has a genius in him, and
Yeah.
he's got a neuroticism, and he's got all those things that come along with being somebody that's unique.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I saw him, and he was at the table with all of us and stuff. And I just wanted to say, man, I love your movie. I want to say something,
Yeah.
but it was everybody was talking. He was, of course, the center of attention. And at the end of the evening, I'm coming out of the restaurant and I'm going across the the alleyway towards the parking lot, and I'm seeing him take off. And I don't know if it was the Pussy Mobile or one of his other cars.
Yeah.
Can't remember now, but it was just driving away. I thought, well, there goes that opportunity. And then suddenly I hear the car backing up, and he comes all the way back, and he goes, Tom McLoughlin, One Dark Night,
Yeah.
Jason Lives, Thorny Am I released. He went through like a Rolodex in his mind of all the details. He was, he was bringing up TV movies. He knew so much, and I was going, oh my God, that's the thing. All those years in the video store, the obsession, has all the movies collected. I mean, he lives and breathes this. Then at another night, he sat next to me and he pitched me the whole Grindhouse double feature.
Yeah.
And when you're this close to him and he's talking, you were about ready to reach into your wallet and go, here, take my credit card. I want to see this movie. His passion, his charisma is unlike anything you've ever seen before. So Harvey, all these guys just like let him go. My oldest son was on Bill 1 and 2. Actually got my son on when they were doing the martial arts practicing and stuff, the whole Uma Thurman's baby while she was working out.
Right.
So he got a little touch of that. But my assistant was telling me that, at a certain point, it was supposed to be one movie, big ass script, but it was supposed to be one movie. Quentin just kept going, and somehow they kept giving him the money, and that thing just went till it was too big, and it had to be, 2 movies. And they were like, no, who else is going to get away with that? You have to have somebody like the way that company that was willing to do that for him, and somebody that can fucking sell ice cubes to Eskimos. I mean, he's got that talent. He's got that, and you don't feel like you're being conned. You just feel like this man's got the greatest idea I have ever heard in my life. Don't get in his way. This is too good. So that's a gift. I mean, that you can't go out and pretend that.
Well, when he talked to you and gave you pretty much the entire, I remember you sharing that story. So he basically told you from start to finish what Death Proof was going to be, and was it pretty much exactly the same from what he remembered?
Pretty damn cool. I mean, I was so overwhelmed, and he was talking so fast, and then there was a lot of stuff. There were other trailers that ended up never being shot. There was a whole thing that he had planned at the end when the whole thing was over, and you thought it was over. That somebody said, ladies and gentlemen, if you wouldn't mind just hanging in, we actually have a preview of a new motion picture. It's going to be coming here. And it was like a whole nother, I don't know if it was like a Swedish sex movie, or I can't remember exactly, but it was something really twisted and bizarre. And it's like, he wanted to get that out there too. But I remember when I saw that as a double bill, people, got up after Robert Rodriguez movie, Planet Terror. Is that Planet Terror, right?
Yeah, it was Planet Terror, yeah.
And they left. They didn't know there was another movie, and that became like, well, we better break these in half and, sell them separately here, because people aren't getting, this.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, because I know Quinn is very passionate about it. And the unfortunate side too, and I think it has, like I said before, this is the general public. When he was doing, what was it, Hateful Eight, he wanted to shoot in 70 anamorphic.
70,
So, and he was really passionate about bringing that back to the audience. Hey, we're shooting it old school. It's picture quality. It's really, really good stuff. And they showed images of the film prior to its release to kind of show how good the movie looked, which it did look great. But they had this whole thing about how old school Hollywood would have these premieres and they would have this like spectacle. And he was trying to replicate that, to help promote the movie, but no one cared. It didn't really make a difference, because the problem was that I think was the most consistent thing was that a lot of the theaters would have these projectors and they're all digital, and very few kept the film projector. And the ones that were there doing it before were, I think I heard stories, they were actually called back. Hey, Bob, that film projector we had, we can't find that it can work. Can you just come in and just fill in the time to show this movie, because no one else can do it, and this is the only way we can show this film.
Well, and he got screwed in his own town. I mean, his big thing, and I remember talking to him about this, was Cinerama Dome. That movie was supposed to go in the Cinerama Dome, and he got bumped.
Because of Star Wars, right?
Yeah. And was he mad as a motherfucker.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like this is the whole thing. Was to show it there. But like at a certain point, though, he realized that, look, there'll be certain people that are going to see it in its full like they used to call roadshow production, with the way the
Yeah,
studio
yeah, yeah.
wanted it to be and look, and with an intermission like with Gone with the Wind or whatever, and a book that came with it, all that stuff. Remember, I got a poster from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that they were giving out. That was so cool,
Yeah, yeah.
with all the locations and stuff. And seeing that movie at the Cinerama Dome, when they drove past it and the characters drove past it, a whole audience just exploded,
Yeah.
which you don't get anymore either, which is another huge pet peeve of mine, going to the movies and everybody's, it's like, react. Jesus
Yeah.
Christ. I grew up in an age in the 70s and 80s where, people were up out of their seats. Motherfucker, get out of there. Oh,
Yeah.
Lord, shit. And the audience would laugh. I would put jokes into my movies that
Yeah, yeah, I
the
remember.
audience would pay off, because I could see this is an interactive, art form all of a sudden.
Right.
And then once television kind of came in, and the generation basically grew up just watching, yeah, that was cool. Yeah. Because, you lost all that incredible energy.
Yeah, I think some people have been desensitized to with this whole, how things have, the landscape of film. It's changed, like even the last 15, 20 years, it's changed
Yeah,
dramatically. A
huge.
lot of it, people can put this to blame, and maybe it could be the case. I think it is. Streaming has changed all that. It's really changed everything. The guys that would never do a streaming television show or a film are now doing it. I was the biggest game changer for me that I realized, like, holy shit, this is going to change everything. Was when Brad Pitt had done a Netflix original movie. Never in a million years would I ever think that Brad Pitt would do a streaming original movie.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I was like, okay, this is going to change everything. And then lo and behold, you've got more other people. George Clooney did one recently. You've got several other actors who, would never even dare step on a television set in the peak of their career. And here they are, just working on projects that are well received, probably more so than the films that they've done in theaters in the last couple of years. So it's changed.
Well, again, it's like you go where the money is. And back when I went into television kind of kicking and screaming, I used it as an opportunity to make movies, but I would get chosen over William Friedkin, over Peter Bogdanovich, over major heroes of mine, because it was like, they're going to, their cost is going to be much more. Second, we don't think they can bring this thing in 18, 20 days or whatever. It's going to cost us. So we'd rather have you than them. And I'm going, this is fucked up. This is like, who says they can't do that? I mean, Scorsese proved with After Hours, he could make a really condensed, but fucking great movie, with that. But now it's like all the guys that were kind of part of that world, they can't get, those jobs because the majors are coming in and there's the money to support that. And the big filmmakers are going, shit, I can do a 2-hour movie, or I can do, an 8-part or 6-part, where I can really make, a major movie. I could never get released in the theaters. And there's an audience, and there's pay, and there's stars, and, so it's all, completely different landscape. So all the young filmmakers, festivals, I mean, you've got to like make something small enough, cheap enough, that you can afford it, that nobody's going to lose any money, and try to get it in the festival. And then hopefully it'll get on a circuit of some sort, and you get some acknowledgement, and something can go from there. And the TV series, obviously, people like the binge. They love that idea that they can watch something all at once, so they can parcel it out, to their liking, as opposed to having to wait a week. And I love the show make you wait. It's like, shit, I wanted to see another episode. It's like, come back next Thursday.
Yeah, Disney Plus, I think, was really smart in doing that with releasing their, the Marvel shows like that. It's building their Marvel shows. I think that's really doing that. But, well, you mentioned something before about filmmakers, newer filmmakers now. But, the one thing about, because I'm going back to Quentin here, is that, what I love about Quentin's is that he's brought back a lot of people who have been forgotten, and brings them into their film, and in some way or shape, it actually catapult their career or reignite it for other. In some cases, John Travolta being the biggest example, because he was at that point where no one gave a shit about his movies because they weren't doing very well.
Yeah.
But he always, but he kept referring. People thought, oh, you probably loved them in Grease or Saturday Night Fever. No, it was Blowout with Brian De Palma.
Yeah,
that was the movie. Like, this guy's a fucking good actor.
Yeah.
And then got him, and then of course after the fact, we've got other people like Sid Haig, who's has somewhat of a resurgence, especially with the Rob Zombie movies. But he's worked with him in Jackie Brown, Pam Grier, Robert Forster was another big example where no one cared about him, and he
Yeah.
got a nominee for an Oscar. Then all of a sudden now he's on the list of many actors you can call out for the following things. Like before he
Yeah.
couldn't even get his name on that list.
Robert, I got to know a little bit when I did The Black Hole for
Right.
Walt Disney, and incredible cast, and Ernest Borgnine and Anthony Perkins and all these incredible guys. And Robert Forster was the star, and I looked at him like that's a legendary actor there. I mean, not just have star quality, but just a really good craftsman and funny and stuff. And I thought, one day when I direct, I'm gonna, I really would love to work with him. And it was like a dream come true years later, when I did Murder in Greenwich with him, and I got to say, I can't tell you how much this means to me that you said yes to this. And that's one of those kind of wonderful things that can happen, doesn't always. But I don't know what would happen with him if that hadn't happened with Jackie Brown for him and brought him, back into, working all the time again.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is too is that Quentin tends to bring out people who are like the most. I don't mean to say it in a negative light, but like the most obscure people that no one would consider. Like I was blown away, and I didn't know it at the time, but I learned it after the fact. The director who was with DiCaprio in the trailer, talking about his character with the mustache, whatever. I didn't realize that who the actor was until after the fact. Who he was the original Spider-Man in the TV show. And when I learned that, I was like, oh, so he really goes like deep into the trenches and pulls these people out and gives them an opportunity, and hopefully you would think that it would give them, and I think it did, if I'm not mistaken, but at least until COVID. But like little details like that. I mean, a lot of other directors do that. Christopher Nolan has done that with several actors. He did it for Eric Roberts. He also had done it for Tom Berenger and many other people too. So like, the guys who grew up loving these actors and artists that have been in the industry for a number of years, no one's ever heard from them, and they're coming in and say, hey, you know what? We've got a major project. Would you be in Inception with me? Absolutely. And here we are working with seeing these actors showcasing how great they really are, because they really are. And these directors noticed that and remembered that and brought them in to to a worldwide audience. Whether or not if it works in some cases, it varies, but it's nice to see that these people appreciate that and put them out there for people to understand, why they were there in the first place. And that's something that
I got that chance on my very first movie because I was trying to just to find the guy that would be the husband.
Yeah, Adam West is referring to him. Yeah.
And the casting director said, I mean, his agent sent him in. I know you're gonna say no, but I said, what do you mean? Why would I say no? That's Batman. Are you kidding me? I grew up with that. And he goes, well, he's not really. He's been doing, I think he's done some softcore things. And I don't know. I mean, it's like, I said, so he's a guy trying to get a job. You kidding me? If I can get him and he's going to do it for the lowly price that, we're paying and all that shit, because it was obviously ultra low budget.
Yeah.
And what was funny is that, and maybe you've already heard this story, that he came in and it was like, Tom, I thought if I started the line, and then I'd bring it down here, and it's far more interesting to have it kind of go up and down a bit.
Yeah.
No. And I managed to get that away from him, and he was very respectful, very funny guy.
But he did a little bit of that in the movie, though.
What happened is he got looped. He got, the movie got out of my hands.
That's right.
The company went bankrupt. Was taken over by Chuck Sellier, who did the Silent Night, Deadly Night, I think ultimately, but he was a producer out of Utah. And he changed so many things in the movie. I can't say it's a completely different movie, but it isn't. But the beginning's different. He brought Adam up, and the woman playing Olivia, and shot some stuff. And then when he looped Adam, he wasn't paying any attention to that. He just let him do what he does. So it still ends up in the movie regardless. Yeah. But the main point is exactly like what you're saying with Quentin. It's like there's these people you love, and whether they are box office or the flavor of the week because they did some TV show, then they their agent said, oh, they're really hot now. They're they just been on the on the latest soap opera at night. You pull these people out of kind of obscurity and you go, no, give them the job, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
And I love doing that. I love pulling somebody off the street and say, make them the background here. It's like, what? Yeah. You do anything? No, come on. It just, there's a lot of, fun about making magic happen. And however way you can do it.
Yeah, it's amazing that when you see these, and plus, with Christoph Waltz, once he did Inglourious Bastard, everyone knows who he is now, and he's been in countless movies ever since, and winning 2 Oscars. With the only actor that Quinn's ever worked with that's actually won an Oscar from his movies, which is quite it says a lot about, Quentin, but it also says a lot about Christoph as an actor, because he really is that good. But
Yeah.
that's another thing about with a lot of actors who have worked in this industry too, that they've come to a point where they reached this peak, or they have reached this peak, and then they kind of just go away in the ether, and people have forgotten about them. So, and it's an unfortunate thing, because I think there are incredible people out there who have done a lot of great stuff, and then no one's ever heard from them again. But then what's changed a lot too, as we sort of touched upon earlier, was that then there is a resurgence of the old pop culture things that had occurred back in the 70s, 80s, and even to the 90s, where now everyone is interested in about learning about what it took to make those movies, and going through the stories. It's like everyone's now, the things that were considered to be forgotten have now slowly come back into the pop culture stratosphere, if you will, where everyone's now wanting to know what happened, what was that experience like, and then the popularity starts to come back again. And now I think it's fantastic that some of these people who probably never thought they would have a second chance now have a second chance, where they're able to talk with people who want to be around them, and are paying to speak with them, are paying to get things signed by them, which I think is great.
Well, that brings up a really good point too, of the whole thing with the conventions and all that. I mean, that has really helped a lot of people that you thought, they'd just be laying around in their apartment and having an agent doesn't call them back and all that. And suddenly, you go to these conventions and you are treated like a god. And it's, they're charging, some ridiculous amounts of money. And then there's others that you go, wait a minute, Richard Dreyfuss is doing one of these things, or these heavy metal, rock stars are doing them and all this. And it wasn't like I was avoiding it. I was never really asked. And then suddenly when I started to go, it wasn't so much about the money and the signing. It was a chance to actually talk to the people that grew up on the movies and start talking about it. And then I got depressed and I went, you know what? I don't want to keep talking about shit I did 35 years ago. I am honored beyond belief that this Friday the 13th that I thought wasn't going to show but 2 weeks and then be forgotten, because all of us in the 80s thought that about our stuff. It was just, you got to make what they're going to pay you to make, but it ain't great like the 70s stuff. We're not making Godfather and Star Wars and Rocky and all that. We're making, Freddy and Jason and all this bullshit. But a whole generation, these are their Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, all the stuff that we grew up on as kids. And you go to these conventions and for me, I went like, I don't want to keep talking about what I did in the past. I want to be relevant now to stuff. So it's really kind of kicked me into gear of saying, well, what else can I do? And of course, having the Sloths come back was wonderful, because suddenly I'm back on stage. I'm using the magic that I learned when I was a kid. I'm using special effects that I've gotten from theater and from film. I'm doing the mime that I've learned from Marcel Marceau. All these different things that I've acquired over the 60 plus years, all have now a place to fit. And I'm noticing at these conventions and things that there's never anything that's really cool when they have like the VIP parties and stuff. And I started thinking, well, wait a minute, maybe if the band, basically played the horror, songs, the stuff, the rock and roll from these movies, of which obviously I got 3 great ones from Alice alone in mine, and all of them, Highway to Hell, Sympathy from the Devil. I mean, so I've put together now a group called Horror Rock. And so this is, the new brainchild that, and actually we have our first rehearsal. We put together the songs. We started, everybody working on individually. And, my goal is to start either with the conventions or with the clubs and stuff. And so essentially, either you'll love these songs because they were great songs from the 60s on up now. We're going to do covers, but we're going to make them as hard rock covers as we can do. And the plan is to be able to go to these conventions and have the fans go, yeah, every time you play a song that they know, as opposed to some band like the Sloths, who are wonderful and all that, but we're playing original stuff and obscure covers because we want to be looked at as like, no, we're creating our own stuff here. But it's a whole different thing when you're with fans that this is their past and you're hitting movies that they just love and they love the songs. So that to me is like one of those things that I'm saying, all right, I'll act in these movies that come along. I've obviously written and directed some things. I'm hoping the Jason sequel, that I wrote will go someplace after
Yeah.
that. And it's like you want to just keep coming up with stuff that somehow has all the experiences that you've put together. And it's not like I'm ready to go into that crypt yet. It stands there waiting for me till 2050. Then I'll get in there. So from my standpoint, I got 29 years to get my shit together before I have to get in there and lay there for a while. But even then I got plans of stuff that I'm hoping will happen if I set the groundwork right, as I do every birthday, with having my crypt warming event. But to me, it's constantly about, as crazy as it sounds, there's an energy to me that you have to keep trying to find and feed off of. I'm not Quentin, but I have my own craziness, and I have my own path of things that have happened, and I no longer need to be Steven Spielberg. Is that kind of drove me in the 70s and the films I was seeing there. You just there's stuff that you go, I've had all these different experiences and things I've learned from the TV movies and these great actors I've worked with, and that's what you want to kind of pull in and say, let me do stuff with all that stuff that now I know. I'm not just imitating. No, now I know this from experiences and from just the experience of making movies in so many different genres.
Right. Well, so, with having going through that period where you say you're starting to get a little depressed with this whole thing. So that the idea of you starting the band and that kind of reignited for your passion to want to do something different in that particular field with the conventions. Was kind of the main purpose behind that, or was it just something that came somewhat organically and where you thought, let me try it in this field and see how that plays out? Is that kind of more or less?
Yeah. I mean, it literally came out of, going to these things, being, talked to, and people loving and wanting to, obviously buy pictures and have me sign posters and all that stuff, which is great. And I would not want to stop that for no other reason than I just love being able to be around the people that love these things. That, how many times I've seen this movie? Over 100. You're kidding me. Over 100 at least. It got me through the period when my dad died. My grandmother and I watched that over and over. Friday the 13th. Yeah. Same thing, Date with an Angel. My mother watches that every holiday. We had to sit there and watch that movie. But now it comes to love it. You find out certain movies, have effects on people that are far long lasting than you ever experienced with anything else that you've done, or that, that they mean something in someone's life. Not just it was an escape. Well, that was a cool movie. Yeah. It really became important. So, but while I was sitting there and stuff, I kept thinking, is there something creative that I can do within that context, as well as just, continuing to try to, write material that somebody might, jump to. But, we're just like, giving all the different ethnic, and races and women and everybody who never got chances now, which is so important.
Yeah.
It's all of us, old white guys going, well, wait a minute, we still got shit to say. Sit down, you had your chance. So it's like, it's not going to go away. I have to find some, vehicle for it. Right. Rock and roll has been, great that way.
That was really your first love, right? Music was really like your first thing. Am I correct in saying that?
I mean, here. It's green.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, for those of you who can see it when it flashes.
Oh, that's right. I forgot the story.
John Sturgis's director's chair.
Yes, that's right.
I stole when I was a kid from the back lot of MGM.
Right.
And that's what I wanted to be. I wanted.
Oh, that's right. You did say that. I'm sorry. Yeah.
And then the Beatles hit. And then, when I was like 12, 13. So then everything went, off that direction. Father wanted to disown me because I went from the filmmaker he was, excited about. And also I was doing magic and he was a magician, to suddenly I was doing that. And then when I got back into film again, I was the hero. But, you have these different things that you come across, and there is periods that were sort of like 10-year blocks, like the early filmmaking, the years of the rock and roll, mime, working with Dick Van Dyke, getting an Emmy nomination, into the movies, and then to writing, producing, and directing and stuff. And then, come, 2010, 2011, the rock and roll came back again.
Right.
So I'm in this weird place now where I'm not sure exactly, what is next. Um, I'm not afraid of death, obviously. If I wouldn't have bought the crypt and done what I've done. But I look at that as, well, that's still whatever happens down there. I'm setting the stage the best I can, and we'll see. But I still feel like there's things in this period now before that I just kind of, gonna keep running down the road and see what I run into, or what
Right.
somebody's like, oh, wait a minute, there's a path I haven't tried, and you go that way. But
It's
it's just not wanting to give up the passion of creation.
Yeah, and that's one thing I think I really picked up with you very early on. Wow, because the first time I think I ever saw an interview with you, this was like years ago, mind you, but I remember distinctly. I mentioned before about your personality. You were consistently calm and collected, but you could hear it in your voice, your passion behind what you've done. I mean, I guess I was going to ask you, but I think you've already pretty much answered my question for me. Is that if you've ever felt burnt out from any of these passion projects you've done, in music, films, or
So I'll get, I don't want to say burnt out, but I'll sort of get, I'm getting in a rut here, and I need
yeah,
to break this. And that obviously was the situation with the TV movies, where, I went from the network movies of ABC, CBS, and NBC, and then it kind of moved into Showtime and USA, and what was the other one? Can't remember right now. And then it got into Lifetime, which I was the last guy in the world who makes horror movies to be doing television for women. And it was like, shouldn't a woman be writing and directing this? What are all these dudes in here? And it's like, we don't have any, female directors that it's like, bullshit. They're out there. It's like, well, you know how to do this. We know we can do this with it, So it made me have to reach in and start getting on the internet, with which I wasn't, and start researching things and going places where I could talk to people that did something like this or thought a certain way, hire actors that could understand what this character was. And so, I mean, it really gave me a lot of insight, but at the same time, I really had to find things that I could connect with, so that I could do these movies honestly, and hopefully wake up every morning going, I'm glad I'm making this. This is something that I'm not embarrassed about, or,
right,
disgusted or anything else. But towards the end, it got really, really tough, because my personal life and making these things and not having the kind of control that, one had, because that whole world was disappearing and, was becoming a real dinosaur, that I had to basically say, stop, before it gets any worse. And it just so happened that the rock and roll thing literally came in within that year,
that type
and that
of,
sort of changed my course there. But it didn't stop me from going to the movies every weekend. Every time a horror movie came out, had to go first show, first night. All those things don't change. That passion of wanting to see an audience get excited about something again,
right,
like they used to, and things going, it didn't happen here. Okay, I'm going to go to it. I'm really excited about it, all the buzz, everything. I've got a girlfriend who is just crazy about horror movies, particularly the 80s. So it's really easy to have Shudder on pretty much 24/7 around here. And, she get really excited about the possibility of what this movie would be. And I remember going to it first show, huge crowd and all that.
yeah.
And the only great reaction was the kiss between the two kids. That was the only thing where everyone, whoa. And I went, oh, this is fucked. Okay, I'm going to east side of town. I'm going to go with the folks, folks that are, go and they rent the movies, and they do nothing, not even the kiss. Shit, one more, it's Sunday night. Figure, okay, same thing. I'm going, I don't get it. This is a good movie. They should be reacting to this kind of thing, Quiet Place, same thing. Everybody loved it, but nobody was really like getting off on it, in a way that felt like the ride. And that frustrates me, but I don't give up hope. And when I was writing my Jason Never Dies script, I kept visualizing myself sitting in a theater with a bunch of other yahoos, trying to give them the Yahoo moments, in there, and tried to write it with that idea of not necessarily them participating, but things that they want to see in these kinds of movies, and set it in the world that they, love it to be in, which obviously is the forest and,
Right.
isolation and things, but add the element of the winter. and have it justified. It's not just they're there, you know, and happens to be the winner, which make no sense, but you know, the potential victims and that they're fighters, and that, you know, giving Jason a whole different sort of, you know, way of having to deal with them, and then try to twist it a few times along the way that will hopefully be surprising. But again, there took a lot of time to finally come up with enough ideas that came together to make this. But you know, it's basically something that, you know, sits back here on the shelf until these guys decide, you know,
get their shit together.
But
is there anything that you want to promote or bring up with anyone to be aware of, as far as any upcoming projects or anything that you want people to be on the lookout for down the line for you?
Well, pretty much, I think I've already kind of pimped them along the way there. You know, horror rock is the thing that I, you know, have the most passion at this moment, because tomorrow we, you know, we get together and start, you know, doing these things, and then where it leads, we don't know. But it's something that, you know, gives me horror, gives me rock and roll, sense of humor. And the main thing is just to involve the audience, because it's something that they can identify with, which I think is exciting. Sloths are back. We're starting to book shows again since the pandemic. So that'll be exciting to get back out there. You know, we actually do have a, you know, a fan base of people, and a lot of our songs are in, you know, upcoming and have been in past low budget movies and things. Fanboy 13 that Deborah Voorhees put together.
Yeah, I've heard of that one. Yep.
In there. And in the Amityville Horror movie, Dan Farron did a couple years back, had one of the songs, and I think they're going to put another one. They had one in the Last Vengeance. I think they're going to put another one in here. And I can't remember. There's been a ton of ones that have used the material. So we keep, you know, we keep on keeping on. What will happen with the group, I don't know. You know, they will slowly die off one by one. And as I tell people on stage, you know, have your cameras ready, because if I go down, wouldn't that be great to be the person that got that on tape? You know, I said, you know, because we're death defying. I mean, that's what we're doing up here. You're not supposed to be doing this shit at our age, but if I'm going to go out someplace, I mean, at least want to go out on stage, you know, and doing what I love, rock till you drop. And then script wise, Dan Merrick's out there trying to get us that location that we lost, you know, for the his series, The Black Veil. He's done one episode, and there's Jeffrey Reddick is going to be doing one of the upcoming ones, and all Southern Gothic horror stuff, which is, you know, very cool. And as I said, the scripts, I just keep, you know, writing them, and we're all waiting for what's next. You know, where can you put yourself where people are going, yeah, you know, we'd love to do that. And I don't know if it's like doing an episode of some new horror series or doing a film, you know. And there's always the biggest kick I get these days, and has been for years, is going on these mazes and things that people put together, you know, these experiences. You know, they just put one together, and I think in Las Vegas for the Blair Witch experience that you pay and you walk through, and there's, you know, things that jump out at you, or there's great little storylines. You know, I just think there's a future in that whole, you know, being part of the thing, you know, however you can come up with that, you know, however you can do virtual reality, whether it's with the goggles and something else that brings us in even further. We all had great hopes for holograms years ago, and everybody started putting money into that. That's yet to happen, but that will be great when you can project the movie into the middle of your living room, and you can walk around it, and the people are right there. You know, you're practically
cool,
right there. And you know, I watched the original Westworld the other night again, and I went, that was so cool when that came out, because that whole
I have yet to see that. That's the Michael Crichton one he directed, right? I've never seen that one, but is it really that good?
It's clunky in places,
but
it's like a lot of the older movies, when they were first kind of breaking into a whole new idea of, you know, Yul Brynner should have got an Oscar. I mean, him as Terminator, as basically, if Arnold didn't borrow from him, I'd be shocked. But the way he moved and the way his eyes were, and he was this robot gunslinger, was some of the scariest shit you've ever seen. You know, just watching him walk, the way he walked, and, you know, coming after Richard Benjamin. And I went, this still works. This is still great stuff. Completely different from the Westworld, you know, that they did of recent. completely. But simple, kind of hokey in places, you know, kind of TV movie lighting and stuff. But the ideas, and as I said, Richard Yul Brynner's performance is, you know, definitely worth a look.
Awesome. All right. Well, listen, I appreciate again your time in for conversing with me. It really does mean a lot. So I thank you for taking the time out of your day to do so. But I will make sure to have all your social media links on the video here for everyone to watch, and so that way they can look out to follow you to keep up with your work as well too.
Great.
But otherwise, you have yourself a wonderful day. Thank you again very much for doing this here for me, and be safe.
And also, you guys out there, if there's conventions in your towns or close to you that you go to and stuff, you can put in a word. I'd love to meet you. I'd love to see you in person, but that's going to take, you know, you guys saying, yeah, why don't you have him here? Because 9 out of 10 times they don't think about the people behind the scenes. They're only thinking about, you know, the stars.
Right.
But I find when I go out there, it's like, oh my God, you're here. You know, some of these movies, as I said, really had an impact on people. And if I had a chance to meet James Whale, who did Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, I would have died, you know, to have that chance. So there are people that actually do appreciate the actual filmmakers too. So, you know, if you guys, if we put out a good word, I'd love to meet you.
I would love to help promote that as well too. But again, thank you for your time, and you have yourself a wonderful day. And you keep there. Cheers. Okay.